Hello and welcome to The Conversation with your host, Nadine Matheson. Now, I know it's not Tuesday and this isn't a bonus episode of The Conversation. This is something completely new. I am so excited to introduce you to Coffee Breaks. Now, Coffee Breaks is a brand new segment of the podcast which is going to launch officially in season 4. Season 4 will start in September. And in addition to our regular Tuesday episodes, Coffee Breaks will be 20-minute chats with your favourite authors where we just talk about their new book. And we'll also be answering your questions. So if you've got a burning question that you've always wanted to ask an author, this will be your chance. All you will need to do is send your question to theconversation@nadinematheson.com and we might feature it in a future episode along with a shout out for you. And what I'll also try and do, I'll try and let you know in advance who I'm talking to so you'll be able to tailor your question to that author. Anyway, I didn't want to wait until season 4 to get started because we're only in May and September is still quite a while away. So from now until the end of season 3, I'll be dropping in with episodes of Coffee Breaks just to give you a taste of what's to come. It's literally like walking into a cafe and trying a sample of their new coffee or their new biscuit, or more preferably cake. I prefer sampling cake. Anyway, that is what Coffee Break is about. And I'm thrilled to start things off with today's debut Coffee Break episode featuring my guest, Helen Takhar. And we're talking about her brand new book, The Marriage Rules, which is out today. Now, usually I will say, sit back, we'll go for a walk. But instead I'm going to say, so grab a cup of coffee or tea and enjoy your break. Helen Takhar, welcome to The Conversation Coffee Break.
Thank you so much for having me, Nadine.
Right, this is all new. This is my new segment of The Conversation where we just talk about you and your book for 20 minutes. Like we're just chatting around, having a cup of coffee while we talk about your book. So this is what we're going to do.
Like my ideal coffee break. Yeah.
It's a perfect coffee break. So, Helen, would you like to tell the listeners of The Conversation whilst we're having our coffee break about your new book?
Thanks. So my new book 4, is called The Marriage Rule. This is the US cover. This is UK. So what is the one rule of staying married? Well, Elle's friend tells her to stay married. You need to have sex with your husband whenever he wants, even if you don't want it. To which Elle is horrified, particularly when the problems in her marriage lead her to wake up dazed and confused in a hotel room next to her lover. But there are 2 problems. One, he's dead. And secondly, the guy next to her is not in actual fact her lover. So we have 2 timelines. We've got the locked box kind of procedural timeline where Elle looks at her body, her phone, the scene to work out how she got there, who are the culprits for what's happened to her. And there are several. And then there's the historical timeline 3 weeks before where she finds out about the marriage rule. And we peel back the layers of Elle's life to understand how she found herself in this predicament.
You know what? When you said the marriage rule, this wasn't what I was expecting. I don't know what I was expecting. I'm thinking a little bit. Well, I knew it wasn't going to be fluffy because it's you.
I don't do fluff. I don't do niceties.
Ellen doesn't do fluff. But I was like, oh, okay. And now we're not just one lover. Well, yeah, she wakes up with the person who's not even her lover. It's not even her husband.
Yeah. It's the worst possible person this person could wake up with that you could wake up with. I won't say who because it is part of many twists in this book.
We're doing this coffee break with no spoilers. So Helen, what came to you first? Was it the character, a specific scene, like waking up in the hotel room with the man who's not her lover, or the overall premise, or just something completely different?
So I developed a story. I was thinking about developing a story about mismatched libidos in long-term relationships, particularly when children come into the equation, for ages ago, because it's one of those, I don't know how you develop some of your themes, but I just listen to what folk are saying, what folk are writing about. But it wasn't enough. Mismatched libidos and the pressure under new mums just wasn't enough to hang a book on. And then I've always been actively interested, appalled, outraged by the persistent violence and coercive control against women and girls across the world. And then I was reading some research in the pandemic about how the pandemic had really accelerated violence against women and girls, and the UM's calling it the shadow pandemic. And I thought, okay, that's enough. If I bring those two themes together and I send an every woman character through those issues in a kind of psychological thriller way, then I've got enough to write a book. So that's and then by the time I came to write it, it was ready to go.
You know, it's interesting when you was talking about like the rise in domestic violence during the pandemic. They always say, like, in addition to the pandemic, it's always Christmas. There's a rise in violence, and also football events. Like World Cup, Euros.
Yeah,
there's always an increase,
a big acceleration. And actually, in terms of, you know, one of the versions of the abuser's playbook is reproductive control, where the woman is kind of coerced into having a child, and actually when they're really vulnerable in the earliest days postpartum, the earliest periods postpartum is when the violence and the coercion can accelerate too. It's kind of well understood, but somehow normalised or accepted. I mean, why aren't we out on the street, you know, every day about the conviction rates for rape in this country, right? Why aren't we? Why does it persist everywhere all the time, this violence against women and girls? I don't have the answers, but I wanted to write something that was part of the conversation.
Yeah. Even I, like, even been in criminal law for 20 plus years now, I don't have the answers.
No.
You think you do. You think you've worked it out. Yeah. And it's like another variable comes into play.
But it is across social classes, it's across history, it's across geography, it's across ethnic background. There's not a single group that's immune from males being violent and coercive against females. So yeah, it's baffling.
It will continue to be baffling. One day we will have answers. So Helen, with your book, with the marriage rules, which character surprised you the most whilst you were writing the book?
So her mother-in-law, Elle's mother-in-law, a lady called Patience Graham, I knew I wanted to write a nightmare archetypal mother-in-law. I just knew she needed to have that, you know, grist to the mill. But I didn't know how much depth into her pathology I was going to introduce, which I managed to do. So she is quite to me, she's quite a stunning character in terms of her physical presence and her way of speaking and the way she holds herself. But we also peeled back her layers too, so it was great to bring depth to that character as well.
You know, I never asked this in the other conversation, the podcast, but I never asked the writers if they're planners or plotters. It normally will come out naturally, but are you one or the other?
Both. No, I'm a bit of both. Like, I have in the past basically written the beginning and the end of a book. I did that for my debut. I knew where I wanted to start it. I wanted to see this woman ruined, and then at the end I wanted to fight back and maybe win in a fashion. But yeah, it depends. Like, I find myself spending like years sitting with a story, and then just developing it in my mind, and then but you still, I don't know, you write, you know, you learn as you write, don't you? And that you can, things announce themselves in characters that you weren't expecting along the way.
Even if you're a planner.
Even if you are a planner, I can't imagine anyone sitting down to write, you know, 90,000 words and knowing exactly who everybody is and how everything's going to go. Do they?
No.
Do they do that?
No, because I don't. I mean, even though I do plan, like anyone who listens to the podcast know that I do plan. Yeah. But I always say characters will still appear out of nowhere. Yeah. Like they just appear and they come fully formed.
It's so interesting.
With their own backstory, and they find a way of fitting into the plot that you have planned, whether it's like a year ago or a couple of months ago. They will come fully formed on the page, and you're like, okay, who are you? Okay, fine. And I'll work out what to do with you.
And do they kind of tug? I've heard some described it as like characters and stories like tugging at their sleeve. Like, so you're just doing your thing, and there's this thing tugging. Okay, you're like, okay, come on, Come
Yeah,
on, we're in.
excuse me.
Because you can't resist, because they're just tugging at your sleeve so much.
You
And
have to put
you
them in.
feel that. Do you
Yeah,
feel
you
feel that?
do, and
Yeah.
you put them in the story. So even like you can't plan for that, but
No, that's the magic.
yeah, I think that's right. I think that is the magic of writing when, as I say, scenarios, little subplots,
Yeah.
characters who you thought were going to be minor, then
Yeah.
suddenly you finish
Yeah.
that first draft and they're like, oh, you're not a little character actually, you're quite
Yeah.
big.
Yeah. Yeah.
Helen, what's the most random fact you now know because of the marriage rules, because of this book?
This is a really good question, and I like it because it allows me to talk more a bit about patience. So, I've developed this archetype, and I wanted her to have a very specific presence, including a scent. Now, my mum used to wear this scent called Rivian by Yardley back in the 70s. It's kind of a soapy, bergamoty thing. And it gets and in the book, Elle transfers Rivians, everywhere she goes, which is a useful kind of plot device. And then I wanted to make her a bit like Mrs. Danvers, from Rebecca, this kind of, the over mistress of Mandalay. And then either I learned, because I read Rebecca when I was really small, and then I remembered the boat that Rebecca disappears on, or is implicated in her death, is called Rivian, I will return, which is the kind of the promise to the poor second to Mrs. De Winter, who narrates to Rebecca that she will be back. So it was really, it felt like a really neat little, sometimes when you're writing, you get these little green lights that say you're doing the right thing.
Yeah.
It felt like a green light because it was but it was something I'd forgotten and then remembered. That's pretty cool.
Green lights are cool. Green lights are good.
Yeah. Do you get them? Do you feel them?
I was thinking, I got it when I wrote The Binding Room. And again, it comes down to not being able to plan everything.
Everything, yeah.
Characters surprising you and this missing baby plot suddenly materialized. And it popped, like it literally appeared on the page. And I was like, well, first I went, yeah, but I didn't even say that. I went, oh shit. I wasn't planning for this. But then I was like, oh. And it's like green lights all the way. You're like, okay.
Yeah.
This is going to work. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So Helen, was this book harder or easier to write than your last one, and why?
So I think it was easier because I've been developing it for so long. And also, so my last book, Nothing Without Me, was set in the world of film and TV. It's quite a complicated sort of universe. This is really contained, domestic, with some workplace drama as well. And obviously for half of the book, we're just in one room with Elle as she explores, the clues. It's kind of like her own procedural investigation into what's happened. So it was easier. There are some scenes in the book that were really, really hard to write. And I know there's been quite a visceral reader response to those scenes, so they weren't easy to write, but overall the book was easier to write.
Were you expecting the visceral response? Because I already know the scene because we spoke about this before, and I just
yeah.
But did you want that? When we're trying to talk about it without talking about it.
Yeah. So I don't know that I ever want. I want a strong response, but I want to take readers with me. And I really hoped the way I'd written one of the more challenging scenes took the reader with Elle as she went through it. But I think, I've had a few comments like, but this needs trigger warnings. And, it's when we send our manuscripts off into the world and we've done our best and we've, put our emotions into writing difficult, challenging scenes, as I know you'll do as well. It's hard when the response is I don't want to do, looking away. When you try and take with, it's difficult, isn't it? But then, I wouldn't want anyone to read this who would find this incredibly upsetting or triggering. I wouldn't want to, I wouldn't want to lead to somebody having, being re-traumatized or what have you. So, yeah, it's difficult, isn't it?
Are you aware of that, though, when you're actually writing the scenes? Because I always say I'm very detached from it.
I'm really detached. Well, I'm not detached emotionally. There's like one scene where something very traumatic happens. And I realized that I was rushing through it in the first iteration, the first draft. I'm like, no, you have to sit with it. This is something that, it's an extreme version of something that women go, a lot of women are having to go through or have gone through. So it demanded me to really go there. Did I think about the reader? No, I didn't really at that point. I just thought about servicing the theme with the seriousness that it deserved. I didn't really think about the end reader particularly.
Okay, so without giving away any spoilers, did the book end the way you originally planned, or did it surprise you?
So this is like a genre thing here. So I thought that I had to give it a super bleak ending. I don't know why. I guess because I'm still learning how to write psychological thrillers 4 books in. And then I did want some redemption. I didn't want a tiny spark of hope. And then when my editors, both here in the UK and the US, read the first draft, they gave me permission to put the spark of hope back in. So it did end up being how I wanted it, but despite of myself, not because of my own ability or choices. So, you just need someone to say, yeah, do the thing. Do you ever have that when you're kind of flip-flopping on a choice and then someone goes, no, of course you should do it? No,
I think not in the initial draft that I write. I think when I write the initial draft, I feel like I'm at that moment, I'm quite sure of everything. And then when the edits come back and they're like, well, maybe you should do this and maybe you should do that. And I'm there thinking, really? I feel like I kind of fight it a bit.
Okay.
But then once I get out of my own feelings, I push my ego out of the way and stop being so precious about it. Then I'm like, maybe.
Actually, you've got a point. You got
a point.
You were right.
You were right. You really have to get out of your own way.
That's it. That's such a good way of putting it. And I think we've spoken before about the 7 stages of getting notes, denial, anger, acceptance, resignation.
Well, ones, I don't even know if my first stage is even denial. Mine, I feel like it's just a lie. Like I'm happy to have it because I get the email and I just email straight away going, thank you very much. And I haven't even opened it. I say, thank you very much. I'll get back to you in a week.
Over there.
Then I have to psych myself up. And then I'm like, okay, let me open this and see what it has to say.
I'm a masochist. I just go straight in. Come on, straight in. Hit me. Hurt me.
Nah, I'm not about that life. I don't like pain. What's it like working with 2 editors? And I mean, especially now you've got American and British editor.
Yeah, and it's good. I mean, I've been with one editor, my New York editor, Clea Seraphim, at PRH since the start. So she's been with me all the way. I have had a few UK editors. My latest, my current editor is Claire Gordon. And for whatever reason, I've been really lucky that each of those editors, starting from Emily Kitchen, who first acquired my debut manuscript, they've all worked so well with Cleo, and they've all had, each had bringing something else to the party. I've been really lucky, and and Cleo is brilliant as well as being adaptable. And the joy now is that I have these 4 very wise voices on my shoulders, probably more than 4 if you include my agents as well. Like when I'm saying, do you want to slow it down here? Do you want to make that a bit more, do you want to make that clearer? Would they really do that? So I've got them all on my shoulders now, sort of incorporated into my own sort of editing personality.
Who's the first person? Really lucky. Yeah, who's the first person you showed your manuscript to?
It's usually my friend Vicky.
Oh, really?
Brilliant and a voracious reader. So for a good time now, she's in the acknowledgements. She's first on the list, and then I'll send to my I've got a circle of folk that I trust.
Yeah.
Obviously, after my agent Helen Ogden at WME, she's the very first, always. What about you?
Who sees mine first? I'll always send the first 3 chapters to one of my writer friends.
Yeah.
Because just to know if it's...
Is this rubbish?
Yeah, basically. Is it rubbish? Would you read this? Yeah, I need to know, would you carry on reading this after chapter 3?
Yeah, okay.
And has it hooked you in enough?
Yeah, okay.
And do you think it's any good? That's all I really want to know. So I'll always do that.
Sorry, Nadine. Have they generally gone, have you ever had one that you thought was an absolute humdinger and they've gone, no? Or
No, they've all been, so with 4 books, 4 books in, they've all been, no, this is good, keep going. But they've
okay,
also have always given really good points
great. It's invaluable,
about the
isn't it?
opening. Yeah.
Yeah.
And and I've been like, I think I'm much more open to it at that
Yeah.
initial 3 chapter point.
Yeah.
Whether it's
Okay.
just like a small thing because whether a character said something, or I think one of them, I think my friend Jonathan with the second book, it wasn't even what a character said, it was just the way they moved and how I'd placed them in the
Okay.
scene. And he made a general comment. I was like, oh no, actually
It's
that is a
really
good
good.
point. Yeah. And it
Yeah.
then just follows through. But
Yeah.
after that, I don't send it to anyone until it's
It's on
finished.
lockdown.
Yeah. The first draft no one sees. No one after that, no one sees that first
Wow.
draft. And then
Okay.
they'll see, I'm trying to think, it's like the second, it might be third. Technically it might be draft 3. The way
Okay.
I draft, yeah.
So I don't even consider my first draft my first draft. My first draft is after I looked at it 100 times. It won't be draft. I'd never share draft 1 with anyone.
Oh God, no.
No. I'm talking about I've got like draft 0, A to M, and then draft 1 is the one I'll send to
Yeah.
Ellie.
The official draft, but it always annoys me when it annoys me when I know it's draft 3 that I've sent off, and then I get made its back, and it'll say, let's say the Shadow Carver draft 1. I'm like, this ain't draft 1. This ain't draft 1. How many versions of this?
Let me show you my laptop. Let me show you the various. Yeah.
This is not draft 1. So Helen, did you ever hit the wall when writing this book, and how did you get past it?
No, I didn't. Not on this book. Just on some of those scenes where I was really afraid. I sort of danced on by. I didn't want to write them. But no, the book, no. I have had absolute nightmares with writing books. Book 2 was wall-to-wall nightmare. After my debut, I wrote like 250,000 words probably to get
250.
At least 250,000, if not more, to get to that. I just screwed up. I just really didn't know what I kind of don't know if you found this with your second book. You do the debut and you're like, yes, I can do this. And then it's like, for me anyway, I totally forgot how to do everything. And my editors were so patient, and I'm really grateful to Emily and Cleo for that. But with this one, no. We danced through, we breezed through a couple of scenes that I knew how to go back to, but the overall drafting was really straightforward. Yeah.
I think the second book,
yeah,
I always say I found it difficult. I didn't find starting it difficult because like the best bit of advice I had was from my tutor, who said to me, I can't remember if I must have signed the publishing deal, and he said to me, start book 2 straight away. Like, don't wait. That was the best advice I had. So I started it, but then once I was starting to get into it was a combination of things. So I'm starting to get into the flow of it. But one, we're in lockdown, so that doesn't help.
Right. Yeah.
2, the Jigsaw Man keeps coming back, because now this is your first time, really.
You've no idea about the editorial process.
None at all. Nothing really prepares you for it. You want more edits? Now you want, I don't even know what line edits. I think it's only because Helen and I were in a WhatsApp group. I think it's only because we're in our group, and I'm sure someone has explained to me what line edits were and what
vocabulary is all fresh, isn't it?
And copy edits and all this other editing nonsense. So the book kept coming back, and then because Jigsaw Man kept coming back, it kept breaking up my flow of writing the binding room. And then in addition to that, then once the Jigsaw Man was out, on the proofs had gone out, then I was getting like early reviews in for the Jigsaw Man whilst I'm writing the binding room. And the binding room, I was like, well, I can't do this again. Like, how did I do it? I don't even know I did this the first time. Also I wrote the Jigsaw Man when I was on a course, so I was writing the binding room without that security
safety
blanket and that safety net of having my friends were doing the course with me and be able to bounce back with my tutor. So it was a whole combination of different things that did not make it fun.
Right. Have you heard Simone Biles talk about getting the twisties? Yeah, so it's like, so I describe it as like the writing twisties, because you do the first, whatever incredible to you just seems an incredible feat that you've done this thing and you did it while nobody was watching and you were barely thinking about it in some ways. And then book 2 comes along if you're in contract and you're like, oh my God. And you kind of go out of yourself and it's like, I'm writing a book and and that, you know, that's disastrous for me. But yeah,
it's true. It is the writer twisties. Okay, so Helen, what are you working on next? So the Marriage Rules is out on Thursday for today. Yeah. So what are you writing? What are you working on next?
I always have loads. I don't know about you. I always have loads of work in progress, kind of in train. Do you do that? Anyway, I always have loads on the go. But right now, I'm doing a sort of psychological thriller with a sort of supernatural bent. Working title: Blood Bread Barn. I'm writing a romance, a high concept, time traveling, cross cultural romance with my husband, Danny Takhar. That should be ready for submission later in the year. And then I've started a horror as well that I'm hoping to steam through soon-ish. The psychological thriller is nearly done, but yeah.
I would say you're kind of like ticking all the genre boxes. You've got your romance, you've got your supernaturals, you've got your horror.
Supernaturals.
You got your co-writing.
I've got my partner. Don't know. I found like, I don't know, recently, maybe the last couple of years or so, because I kind of, 4 or 5 into my genre, I kind of need to go somewhere else for a bit. What about you?
Yeah, I feel like I feel like me as a person, I like so many different things. I have so many varied interests. That I kind of feel like I need to just reflect that in my writing also. Because I like a good rom-com. I don't mind having a cry, even though I'm like, I can't believe I'm crying at this nonsense. What's wrong with me? A few days ago,
I'm crying.
Yeah, I'm not crying. I'm like, what is this? I can't believe this is happening. I like my sci-fi. I did enjoy because it was May the 4th. So did I sit there and watch all my Star Wars movies? Yes, I did.
Of course you did.
Of course I did. I like my comic books. So I feel like because I'm so varied as a person, I would like my writing to be varied. Also.
Spill out.
Yeah, definitely. So there is a rom-com in my future.
I look forward to that. I do.
I don't know what my agent will say. Nadine, really? Right, let's just see. No bodies, no dead bodies. Nope.
When is she going to slaughter him?
Nope, there's no slaughter.
No slaughter. She's out going through the pages like, what?
There's no dead bodies, there's no slaughter. So Helen, what message or feeling do you hope readers take away from The Marriage Rule?
So we talked before about how the whole subject of violence, coercive control against women and girls is incredibly complex and persistent. I don't have the answers. I just wanted to maybe be part of a conversation sort of by stealth, because it is a kind of a page-turning book. It's designed to be entertaining, but it is designed to linger. And I guess one of the things that the book hopefully does is, if anyone has ever been tempted to ask a woman in the throes of a abusive relationship, why did you stay? How did you get there and why did you stay? It's a victim blaming question that I think needs to be challenged. And, Elle is an every woman character who finds herself in certain situations. So you can see how she got there and why she stayed. And I've got no ask. Women have always helped women in those sort of situations. I think there is a plea for men to really be part of the collective effort to challenge, a bit like how, Netflix has done with toxic masculinity in the manosphere with adolescents. If we can have more conversations, talk more broadly about how everyday violence against women and girls is normalised, that would be a good outcome for me.
Okay. And finally, Helen, to end our coffee break, because it's been a lovely coffee break, which book, film, show or video game would you recommend?
So I'm going to change the tone of this entirely. I was looking I'm not all kind of grisly stuff, much like yourself. I was lucky enough to see a film called The Wedding Banquet when it opened BFI Fleur Festival earlier, I guess, this spring. It's out on theatrical release this week, and it's on Apple TV, I believe, as well. It is amazing. It's about fan family. It is a real writer's movie in as much as you will gasp at the acrobatic plotting, but also the dexterity with which they manage this tone of this, fan family love story about friends. It's kind of Shakespearean double reverses. It is tremendous, and it's got so much heart and an amazing cast. Go with someone you love. Just go. I can't recommend this film highly enough. The Wedding Banquet, out this week.
I think you did a very good job of recommending it.
Thank you. Honestly, I want everyone to see it, because I just take your tissues, because you'll laugh your head off and you'll cry, and it'll be like, it's gorgeous, amazing film.
Well, that just leaves me to say, Helen Monks Takhar, thank you so much for joining me on this very first coffee break.
You're incredibly welcome. Thanks so much for having me, Nadine.
And that's it for this coffee break. Thank you so much for joining me. Starting from season 4, we'll be bringing you regular coffee breaks, 20-minute episodes, perfect for a quick chat with your favourite authors about their latest books. And here's the fun part. Next season, we're answering your questions. If there's something you've always wanted to ask an author, send it in. Email your question to theconversation@NadineMatheson.com, and we might just answer it in a future episode with a special shout out to you, of course. Until next time, keep reading, keep listening, and I'll see you soon for another coffee break. Oh, and before I forget, don't forget, subscribe, follow, like, review, and share this episode with your friends. Your support keeps the podcast growing, and if you head down to the show notes, you can also support the podcast by buying us a cup of coffee. The links are in the show notes.